Good evening and welcome to everyone joining in. We are extremely glad that all of you could join us for the start of a very special collaboration between INC and AMTZ. INC, with its decade-long legacy, is a pioneer in accelerating the journeys of game changers all across the world. AMTZ focuses on a progressive initiative by being a center for medical technology, employment, innovative research, and incubation of startups. Together, INC and AMTZ have collaborated to create a dialogue between the scientific and social segments of the society with an innovative series titled TechRx, where we aim to bring in the front medtech innovations in India. Today's session will be a total of 60 minutes, with the last 20 minutes open for live Q&A discussion. So please type your questions on the YouTube comment box with your name, and the panelists will address them during the Q&A session at the end. That, like business leader, entrepreneur, story curator, and former venture capitalist. She is passionate about community building and technological innovation, which led her to founding. Please welcome Lakshmi Praturi, CEO of INC. Lakshmi, can I please request you to switch on your mic and video?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Rohan, for that introduction. Welcome, everyone. As Rohan was saying, INC stands for Innovation and Knowledge, and it's a platform for innovation. We work at the intersection of science, technology, communications, culture, commerce, community. All these things coming together with amazing stories. And part of what we do, what makes our work really thrilling, is meeting people like Dr. Jitendra Sharma and working with organizations like AMTZ, which is an amazing organization from India, whose primary vision is to enable a startup ecosystem through research, incubation, and many, many other facilities. In a minute, you'll find out more about AMTZ. This is the beginning of a series we have designed called TechRx, Technology and Medicine, TechRx coming together. What we hope in the next few weeks is to present to you amazing thought leaders in this area to bring to you cutting edge ideas and insights. I would like to introduce to you Dr. Jitendra Sharma. Dr. Sharma is a multifaceted man. His career spans premier institutions like AIMS, World Bank, WHO, really being at the cutting edge of thought leadership. And he has been asked and requested and in some ways courted to come to Visakhapatnam to set up Asia's first medical equipment manufacturing zone. We have software zones, we have electronic zones. This is a very unique initiative to put together a medical equipment manufacturing zone. Andhra Pradesh Medical Technology Zone, AMTZ, in Visakhapatnam. So what I'd like to do before I bring Dr. Sharma is to play a little video to give you an idea of the amazing facility that's being set up there, that's already being set up. Rohan, can you please play the video?
Yes.
Thank you for that. And a little bit of personal history before I bring Dr. Sharma. When the state of Andhra Pradesh was formed, my father was invited to come to Andhra Pradesh to set up first pediatrics department. So he moved to Visakhapatnam and set it up there. And subsequently, I was born in Visakhapatnam. So a little bit of personal connection. And it's really exciting to start this series. So with that, I'd like to bring on the CEO and MD of AMTZ, Dr. Jitendra Sharma. Dr. Sharma, can you please join me?
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, Dr. Sharma. How are you? Namaste.
Namaste.
So, Dr. Sharma, do you mind moving a little bit to your left? Little bit to your left, so you're at the center of the screen. Great. Dr. Sharma, it's just amazing to see. We saw the video, how many things are happening there, how beautiful it is, etc. And I know it's taken a lot of focus, hard work, and a vision. So can you tell us a little bit about the Kalam Institute of Health, AMTZ? What is your mission? What are some of the things that are already happening there? Because I was quite blown away when we met you to know the range of things that are already happening there. So can you give us a little bit of a background?
So to run a family, firstly, thank you very much for this program. Thanks to all the viewers. Thank you to all people who could potentially join and benefit from the TechRx series, which we are planning to launch. But just to answer your question, to run a family, you need a mother and a father.
Yes.
Right? Similarly, to run a sector, you need infrastructure and knowledge.
Correct.
And the relationship between AMTZ and Kalam Institute is something like that. The AMTZ is the infrastructure, the capabilities, the might, the technological depth of the labs, the infrastructure of validation and manufacturing that you saw in the video. But just like the role of the mother is always precious but always hidden, the other part of AMTZ is the Kalam Institute, which is the knowledge body, which tracks the standards, which works on specifications, which defines protocol for testing, which works with technology transfers. So one is like the body and the other is like the mind. And AMTZ Kalam Institute combination is perhaps one of the most credible combinations, institutional combinations, both set up the same entity by the same individuals for very different complementary purposes. Because historically speaking, those SEZs that were set up in India more as real estate of land, electricity, water, and roads without a knowledge component.
Correct.
And the universities that were set up for knowledge component didn't have the might of the manufacturing infrastructure. It is for the first time we have brought these two things together.
Yeah.
Which is allowing the family of manufacturers, researchers, innovators, and startups to grow.
Yeah.
And in the current times, what it has led to is a substantial response for something like COVID, right from manufacturing of mobile lab for COVID testing, not just sample collection, but an actual laboratory testing on wheels, ventilators that you saw in the video, diagnostic kits, IR thermometers, medical textiles, ventilators, and so on. So there's a lot going on, but I'll take you through all that in the subsequent question.
Yeah. And it's really great, as we talked about, we wanted to start this series, TechRx, at the intersection of technology and medicine. So to bring thought leaders, etc. So tell me about what is your vision? Why did you want to do this?
Essentially, knowledge sharing is important. But for knowledge sharing, we have many repositories of knowledge, both online and offline, both digital and non-digital. But what can really teach in medical, in clinical evolution of clinical medicine and healthcare is the experience.
Right.
And that's why we thought if we could streamline a large bunch of experienced innovators from around the world, the collective wisdom. Because see, what comes from the digital or non-digital repository is only the information. It's
Yeah.
not wisdom. But what
Correct.
comes from a person who has architected that knowledge or lived that knowledge becomes wisdom.
Right.
If we could bring a large number of innovative minds who have added to the body of global knowledge in medical technology, it would help the innovators, startups, entrepreneurs, and
Correct.
it will also help the manufacturers. And that is why
Right.
we thought of naming this series Tech RX, because tech is for technology and RX
Yeah.
is for doctor's prescription.
Correct.
Which
Yeah.
means you bring technology that can be used as a clinical prescription, changing
Yeah.
human lives, making them better through the
Yeah.
wisdom and experience of innovators from around the world that makes
Right.
RX.
And I think, Dr. Sharma, what's interesting about this is, first of all, this is one of for medical equipment manufacturers here. Most of the, economic zones are software, etc. So this is one of its kind. And secondly, as you're talking about the connection between wisdom and entrepreneurship is very, very, it's not just the people who are there on campus who will be able to watch these. We have a whole global audience that can watch this. The second thing I want to say, because you're in the midst of it, it's difficult for you to see. For us looking in, it's amazing to see what this institute has accomplished, what it has put together. So I think personally, I'm very excited to showcase what you're doing here to a global audience as well. It's a wisdom from outside in as well as the innovation from inside out to showcase. And to continue on that, right now during COVID, a lot of the medical equipment, medical technology, health has gained a lot of importance. I mean, it's very clear now ever than before that groceries and medicine are the two essentials for us, right? So, how has this institute and the equipment manufacturers there been able to contribute to this? And how does all this knowledge, innovation transferring to professionals and society?
That's a very important and a very deep question. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let us take a very small example. The example of N95 masks. N95 mask actually is made of fibers, it's made of fabric, and the fabric used is of two types: the spun-bound fabric and the melt-blown fabric. No, these fabrics are not made by medical equipment manufacturers. They are made by textile fabric manufacturers.
Mm.
These are the factories where large number of migrant workers, large number of women, large number of semi-skilled workers work. These factories, so long as they lead to a value-added product, are extremely important for society and societal empowerment and societal prosperity. Now, when we create a product out of this fabric, using facilities like AMTZ, where you have all the machinery to put this spin-bound and melt-blown fabric together through a certified, quality-assured process of manufacturing, take them through the quality certification system of laboratories, and bring out an internationally certified product, you are doing three things. One, you are providing this product to the society, promoting health at a cost much lesser than what it would be otherwise. Two, you are creating an indigenous pipeline of manufacturing, including the component value chain, the machinery, the maintenance, and the people who use these machines to manufacture. And three, you are enabling a forward pressure on the factories that produce fabrics, which in turn supports thousands of families. So I always give this example, not that I use a car, but if you use a car, if the car can meet and with an accident, or the car can take a person fast. So when you manufacture something like car, you are actually also manufacturing a potential risk.
Right.
If it is misused or used beyond controls, not that it's dangerous inherently. But when you manufacture something like a medical device, you are actually creating a zero risk product in the society.
Yeah.
And then creating a pipeline of three advantages. That's what this sector gives back.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. I think it's very well said is that everything you're doing there has only an upside. You cannot use it in any way to harm humanity, so to speak. And, you were on a certain track and COVID has come. It's like disturbed all our lives in a very, very unexpected fashion. So, what has been the change of pace, change of, I mean, apart from, you might be manufacturing different types of things. Has there been a change in what you do, how you do, how often you do, the pace, anything at all post COVID, and what has the change been?
So without COVID, we were working for about 12 hours a day. And with COVID, we are working for about 18 hours a day. So yes, the pace hasn't changed because we are a fast organization.
Yeah.
Because of two reasons. One, because the technology domain we deal with is very fast. By the time you actually think of producing a 128 slice CT scan machine, there would be in market a 256 slice CT scanner. And the second reason why we have to be fast, because our end customer, the patient, does not have sometimes even few minutes in a hospital. They have minutes in hand to save them, whether it's a shock from a defibrillator or intubation of a ventilator. So we really can't be slow, because our end client, our beneficiary patient, does not have the flexibility and luxury of the timelines we talked about. So this sector, and particularly AMTZ, has always been a pacey organization. But COVID has changed one thing. It has changed our focus to from all kinds of manufacturing to manufacture COVID-related products, such as the RT-PCR diagnostic kits for COVID detection, such as ventilators, such as non-touch infrared thermometer, and so on. The oligos, the viral transport medias, the mobile labs, everything that has to do with COVID. So our focus has changed to COVID. Our speed remaining the same. We are putting more number of hours, more number of people to produce as fast as we can to meet the COVID-related product demands. But I think the good part of this challenge has been the receptivity of people in the society about health products, and about things like social distancing, for example, which was completely missing in pre-COVID era.
Correct.
So today, you can actually talk to a fruit seller or a pan wala or a departmental store, and perhaps they will understand what is a 3-ply or a 5-ply mask,
Yeah.
which they wouldn't have understood in January.
Correct. Yeah. And so basically, a lot of the medical technologies that are being invented here, because of advance in technology, scale, innovation, whatever it is, it's drastically bringing down the costs as well, the medical costs as well. So, in what way can the work that you're doing can be and also this trend of our ability to do larger things that will bring the medical costs down, in what way can it benefit a young country like India?
So that's a very strategic question, simply because actually you are right. It's the cost that determines everything.
Correct.
Perhaps if pizzas would be available for 10 rupees a pizza, we would have it more.
Right.
But in some way, it's being 300 rupees prohibits our consumption of pizza.
Right? Well, maybe that just maybe as well, because pizza is not good for you, but
I know, but
it's different.
a hypothetical example, what you're saying is right, is that cost is a very decisive factor in our value chain, in our decision making.
Right.
I'll give you a small example. Ventilators in India, the cheapest ventilator pre-COVID used to cost 12 lakh rupees. Actually, it was 11 lakhs 80,000 rupees. And,
Wow.
and the most expensive ventilator used to cost 44 lakh rupees, 4.4 million Indian rupees.
Yeah.
The ventilators that AMTZ is making is costing, with all the fairly advanced features of any ventilator available in the market, 1,48,500 rupees,
Wow.
which is 10% of the cheapest possible ventilator, the least cost ventilator which was available in the market pre-COVID. Now, this has happened for two reasons. Reason one is that since AMTZ is a scientific but shared infrastructure, the cost of capital is borne by AMTZ, which it bears through the contributions from many ministries and departments of Government of India. And AMTZ provides for ready facilities for manufacturing in terms of space because they have been provided for by the state government. In addition, it provides for all the scientific validation facilities, which would otherwise cost at least 20 times more outside India. So we didn't have, for example, a world-class electromagnetic interference lab or a world-class 3D printing center, which we have now at AMTZ. The same services would have costed about 20 times more in the global market. Now, when you put these advantages together, the shared scientific infrastructure, the low-cost world-class lab, and the available manufacturing space, that is what allows us to make a ventilator for 1,48,000 rupees, which not only in terms of cost, has the potential to make healthcare extremely affordable in India, and the ventilator is just an example. The same holds true with our CT scan or MRI. So this proposition actually has the potential to make healthcare and health services in India more affordable, more cost effective, and also can help India capture a chunk of global market because we are technically competent and cost-wise competitive.
Correct, absolutely. And I think, there is only going to be more innovation. We talked about mass. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the landscape of medical technology innovation that's going to come, and what do we want to achieve? You talked about 3D printing. I know you are doing a lot of interesting things at the intersection of medicine and 3D printing. So tell us a little bit about what are some other medical technology innovations that we are in the midst of, and how they can accelerate whatever you want to achieve.
No, absolutely. So, medical technology, if you look at and we use the word innovation very, very, very changeably. If you look at the current market of medical technology, the current spectrum of medical technology, we don't count everything as innovation. Yes, CT scan is only 15 or 20 years old in the market, but it's no more an innovation. It is no more innovation. Mobile phone is no more an innovation.
Yeah.
So when we look at the spectrum of medical technology, we are looking at a basket called innovation and a basket called traditional advanced medical technology products. And I'll give you an example of both. Example of a traditional high-end medical technology product would be like the robotic cardiac surgery system. There is only one company in the world that makes a robotic cardiac surgery system. Only one company in the world, in the US. And the second one is in Visakhapatnam at AMTZ.
Wow.
No more an innovation, but it's something that not many make in the world. So it's it's very complex. It's technologically deep. Similarly, we have a helium-free superconducting magnets for MRI. There are only 2 or 3 companies in the world that make it. One of them is at AMTZ. So we have this very deep, complex, high-end medical technology products that is there with us. But then we also talk of innovation. For example, we all know the high incidence of cancer. And we all know that breast cancer is a huge chunk of the total cancer. Now, breast cancer screening has been a challenge because it requires mammography. Mammography has radiation associated with it, so it can only be used in a controlled setting in a hospital with radiation-proof walls and so on. But then we have innovation that does not use radiation technology, but use something known as tactile imaging, which is a non-radiation handheld screening tool like a mobile phone for breast cancer screening. Now that may not be technologically as complex as a robotic cardiac surgery system, but it's an innovation. And at AIMTZ, we have combinations of both these segments. Our bandwidth today stretches from a simple N95 mask to an MRI, a robotic cardiac surgery system to a ventilator, and our innovations range from a non-touch infrared thermometer to a breast cancer screening technology.
Wow. And also, doing all these things is not easy, right? I mean, it seems very easy after you set it up, but and you incubate a lot of innovators also, people that are coming in. So what are the typical challenges of an innovator? And then, I'm sure your facilities, matching some of them, but then they might have other things also. But in this arena of medical equipment, etc., what are the typical challenges you see of innovators?
So, I'm sure you have interacted with so many innovators that you have been able to ask such an extremely relevant question. You see, the field of medical technology is a very complex field. Imagine an innovator working for 3 or 4 years on a piece of machine or a prototype and failing.
Correct.
The cost of those 4 years, both in terms of time, finances, and effort, is huge. Now, imagine the innovator succeeds in 4 years, but in the 5th year, the global trend of technology changes. The innovator still fails for no fault of his or her. Right? So I think there are 2 things that, in fact, 3 things that innovators look for. One is the technological hand-holding. Do we have mentors to guide them, hand-hold them, strategically maneuver their projects so that while an innovator is working for 3 or 4 years on the basic idea of the innovator, the mentor is able to maneuver the innovator in such a way that the evolving technology globally does not go against the basic understanding of the innovator of his machine. If there is something evolving in the world, can it be streamlined or added on in some way to the innovator's basic model? So mentorship is one. 2 is the huge amount of infrastructural requirement that an innovator needs. The labs, the centers, the prototyping, the testing, the validation, the spare part supply, even simple gases for testing of machines. And third is finance. Finance to manage the working capital. Fortunately, AIMTZ has 2 incubators. One is known as MediValley, second is known as BioValley. Like Silicon Valley, have 2 is within AIMTZ looking at innovators, supporting them, where to a great extent we have been able to support these 3 domains: the mentorship, the technological infrastructure and facilities that they need, and the financial support to the extent possible.
Correct.
I think what innovator needs is trust.
Correct.
Is there a bunch of people who can put the trust on them, on their efforts, on their abilities? And I think that is something that we are still looking for from the community out there, because we would like community to believe in the dreams of the innovators, not discard them through small failures or delays, but stick with them, helping them to prove the point they want to prove, because whatever innovator is doing is actually for our sake, for your sake.
Correct. Yeah. Can you give 1 or 2 examples of maybe the innovators who are there, maybe a challenge they faced and how you helped them? just a story. I know many of them, but if you can give an example, that'd be really great.
So an example would be a manufacturer of RT-PCR kits that we are supplying today. For example, this innovator actually had a tool for tuberculosis diagnostics. We supported them with the facilities, the infrastructure, and the market access for tuberculosis. Help them remain in life, in business. In fact, I personally worked with them and supported their cause for the acceptance of their tuberculosis test platform technology, both in India and outside India. Now, that success helped them make grounds in the market, in the healthcare value chain. And when COVID came, they were able to replicate a technology which works on their platform technology for COVID.
Wow.
I think that's to me, that's a beautiful example of how you put your trust and support on an innovator on one project and make them see success. The same innovator can give you a super success in the times of community need.
Right. Yeah. Now, how many applications do you get? How many do you accept? And what do you look for an innovator? Because I'm sure after this, you have a lens of what you look at.
So we do get lots of applications. We don't take everyone, because we are the only incubator in the country that has 100% success rate.
Wow.
There are incubators who have 10% or 5% or 20% success rate, because a lot of their incubatees dry out into failure. Now, we don't take everyone. We take only, and the money, the finance, the muscle, the might is no regard in our measuring an innovator's potential. We pick innovators based on their market acceptance criteria. Are they doing something in which we can help them crack the market? Because you see, there is also and not that appreciation and awards are not good, but there is a rising trend among innovators and among the institutions, incubators and institutions that support innovators, that is very happy just by an award. And we go to conferences, we take innovation award, but not a single order in 5 years.
Yeah.
That's not what makes innovator leapfrog.
Correct.
So we start backwards. When an innovator comes with us with an idea, we see, can we create a market, or does there exist a market for that innovative product? And then we work with the innovator backwards from that market goal. And then we convert the challenges and limitations of the innovator and the innovative technology to meet those challenges and come up to meet the market need. Since we start with the market and not with the idea, but we match the market with the idea, or idea with the market, we are the only incubators perhaps in the country with 100% success rate. No incubator from AMTZ has not seen success.
Yeah. So I have one question, but I want to tell the audience that please type your questions on the YouTube window and we will answer them. Please feel free to type in. Dr. Sharma, what is success for you? When you say it has been success, because it's not always a financial, like an IPO or things like that, right? It's about how is the product solving a problem, but what does comprise of success for you?
See, the Indian medical device market is 83% import dependent. We import about 42,000 crore worth of medical devices every year.
Wow.
And we export only 16,000 crore. We are a traditionally import dependent medical devices sector in the country. For me, every time an Indian made medical device is sold into the Indian market or exported, Either it is increasing India's export potential in global medical devices market, if it is exported, or if the machine or the medical technology is sold in India, it's impacting the import dependency that we have.
Correct.
For
Yeah.
us, that is success.
Correct. Yeah. And I think recently the conversations we are having about being self-reliant and how to do this here. So I think it's very exciting. Have you seen now in your incubators? I mean, one thing we talked about is this is a long-term process. You don't just start one day and say, here is a response. Have you seen any of the products that are being created here now beginning to be exported now? I mean,
Yes.
have any of them reached that milestone?
Yeah, a lot of them. A lot of them. Ventilators, for example, the IR thermometers, the RT-PCRs, many of them are export-worthy products. We have CEs, the foreign regulatory certifications on some of them. Our services are also sold, such as 3D printing.
Yeah.
So we have large number of products already in national and international market.
Yeah. Rohan, while you bring up the questions, I have one last question for you, Dr. Sharma. You're doing something very interesting in 3D printing of organs, etc. I mean, there's a lot of work going on at the intersection of 3D printing. On one hand, it could be like meat substitute, consumption point of view. On another point, our own health, 3D printing of organs. So, what is the latest that's happening in this area, and what are some of the things that are happening in your center?
So every day something new happens in this field and in the center. But yes, in the bioprinting, we are launching a course from the 28th of August, which would be India's first course on bioprinting using 3D printing, which means we take biological parts from the human body, and we could try to create organs. We have been successful in creating human ears, for example, for children who are born without ears. That course is getting launched on the 28th of August. Our partners are the University of Wollongong, which are global leaders in 3D printing.
Yeah.
And the director of that center, Professor Jordan Wallace, is also one of the speakers in TechRX series.
Yes.
So audience will know more about him and his work and our work with them.
Yeah.
The second thing which is happening is when you take, for example, COVID. COVID is not a disease.
Yeah.
It's also the immunoresponse to that disease.
Yeah.
And we are working on certain immunomodulatory products that can give different immunological response. So while disease may exist as a disease, our reaction to it or response to it might be fairly mild.
Right.
These are some of the new things that's happening among our various partners as well.
So we have a question from Puneet, who's saying that for the entrepreneurs who are there, how much equity do you take and what facilities can they expect?
They can expect infrastructural support, all the instrumentation for their work, the manufacturing appliances and machinery, testing, validation. They can expect support on technological standards for their product, support on specifications, to a great extent, to the best possible extent, the market access support. And once they are part of our family, they grow, and we take up to 3% of equity in the startup. But that's something which is a maximum limit. It all depends upon the potential that a product carries.
Okay. So it's not that when somebody comes in there, do they have to pay the 3% before they get a slot there, or you decide later on based on their success?
We decide later on, but the entire roadmap is coming, an entrepreneur coming, technology getting evaluated, the entrepreneur giving us the exact requirements, and if we are able to fulfill those requirements, then we take the equity.
Okay. So hold on, I'm looking at what other questions we have. Okay, there are some more coming in, so it will take a second. So this is very interesting that, so AMT, this whole incubator is owned by the government, or is it a public-private enterprise?
So AMTZ is completely owned by the government. It's supported by the state government as well as the central government of India. And AMTZ has two incubators, as I mentioned, Medi Valley, which is supported by the NITI Aayog.
Okay.
It's an Atal incubation center.
Mhm.
And the Bio Valley, our second incubator, is supported by Ministry of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology, and it's a BioNest center.
Mhm.
Medi Valley and Bio Valley share projects depending upon the idea of the innovator, depending upon the facilities the project needs. If it is purely medical, technology, electrical, electronics, the startups get incubated in Medi Valley. And if it is biophysics or biologics along with medical technology, it goes into Bio Valley.
Okay. Now, Vaibhav is asking a question. How do you think telemedicine will evolve after the recent events of pandemic? And are you seeing maybe a continuation of it? Are you seeing any entrepreneurs, more activity in that space?
So there would be activities. I just wanted to share that I think it's a very important question. And just on the 12th of May 2020, the government of India has notified the telemedicine rules. As you know, it's a gazette notification. You can go on internet and check. As you know, medical prescription was a legal act only when done in person. Consultation to a great extent was legal when done in person. Telemedicine rules have brought in a lot of flexibility and advantages. In fact, it has opened up an entire sector of telemedicine. Now, whenever something like this happens, eventually we see large number of startups coming into that space. Because the rules have been set, the guidelines have been made. And telemedicine traditionally has been more on teleradiology, telepathology, and teleophthalmology. Anything which had to deal with images, because images can be transmitted, read, and the conclusion can be mailed back. But I think non-image telemedicine would now pick up. And if there are any incubators that would like to show interest or have ideas on image or non-image based telemedicine, we would be happy to look at their projects.
Okay. Another question is, hold on one second. There's a lot of questions. Sorry, give me. How do you decide what projects to fund in the medtech space? What do you look for? Do you decide ahead of time? Here are the segments we will decide. We will stick to, or is it more open?
So funding is only a part of our act. The real job is to facilitate them with the technological infrastructure. AMTZ today has technological infrastructure to support right from a thermometer to an MRI. So we generally don't look at a project when it comes to facilitation, because we facilitate every project, every product in medtech space. When it comes to funding, the funding can be given only on those projects that have a potential. And that really depends upon the idea that an entrepreneur has.
Yeah, okay. Another question is, would there be any financial assistance or funding from government or financial institutions, which you said you would, but I guess is it in the range of 5 lakhs or 50 lakhs? What is the range in which you get support?
So our labs put together are in hundreds of crores. Generally, entrepreneurs need funding exactly to buy these machines. We already have it. So the financial requirement is fairly small.
Right.
We do facilitate them, connecting them to financial resources, and then help innovators raise funds for themselves.
Okay.
We just launched today a partnership between the Foreign Commission Office of the UK government, the British Commissioner, the British representative in India, and AMTZ to provide, for example, up to 5 lakh funding for innovations in ventilators.
Okay.
Over and above what we generally do, which is multi-crore worth of infrastructure already at your service.
Right.
So I wouldn't rank funding as the topmost concern or the thresholds as topmost decision points. But we tend to deep dive into the real requirements of the incubatee and see what really is needed and either provide or help them get it by pooling resources.
Yeah. There's a question from Manishka as to what are some interesting frugal innovations you have seen come out of the institute right now?
So from the zone, we have seen, for example, world's first non-invasive hemoglobinometer. We have now a machine which looks at eye, just like the olden days doctors used to look at your eye and check whether you are anemic or not. It takes the image of conjunctiva and gives a digital reading, which means you don't need blood, you don't need the injection, you don't need the of multiple use and so on.
Yeah.
We have seen certain cancer detection technologies that we are working on. We have seen the security camera integrated, the internet security camera integrated with thermal imaging, which can actually give your temperatures as you are walking by.
Okay.
You actually don't need to come close to take temperature. You can walk through and it takes your temperature as part of IT.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, bunch of frugal innovations happening as we speak.
Yeah. So Meghna is saying that India is an emerging economy and with the third highest startup pool globally is ideally positioned to be the leader of medtech innovation. What are your thoughts on it?
I completely agree with her, and thanks to her for raising that question. But I go back to what I consider as success. Having large number of startups or entrepreneurs is good, but seeing them have more share in the national or global market share in medtech is the real success for them and for us.
Yeah. So we have a question from Sham Manta. What is the time frame we are looking at the time we first interact with you and permissions or approvals to get to start?
Generally the same day. You come with an idea, you go back with an approval in the evening. Similarly, in our 3D printing center, you can actually come in the morning with an idea at 9 o'clock, an idea of your own choice, and by evening 5 o'clock, you can walk out with a prototype.
Okay. Wow. Okay. And we have more questions. Okay, then the pandemic has given us an opportunity to press the reset button on innovation. What are some of the observations that have captured your thought?
So I think we need to be set to be reset. And this is a great opportunity to expand our setting stage in tech. Our innovators have actually now gone to, so AMTZ, if I were to tell you in numbers, country does about 300,000, 3 lakh RT-PCR diagnostic tests, COVID diagnostic tests in a day. And from September 1st, AMTZ's individual diagnostic test production capability is expected to be somewhere around 5 lakhs a day. I think it's a time to really leapfrog and excel as a team rather than individuals, so that India has a very respectful and progressive place in the global medtech value chain.
Yeah. And why do you think technology-led product innovation is essentially non-existent in Indian healthcare today?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
So there is, see, the technology-led product innovation, so it's practically non-existent in India because, if you look at the global news or, things like that, you don't hear much of technology-led product innovation. It could be service innovation, etc., coming out of India. Why is that? And what, maybe a subsequent thing is, what do we need to do to change that?
So that's a very, very important question. Technology-led product innovation is slow in India because technology is germinated in two forms. the basic research of the platform technology and the translational research of the platform technology into a product. And the translational research component in India has been traditionally weak. It's getting stronger now. I given to understand 2 days ago, the new education policy has been launched, keeping that also as one of the goalposts in mind. So the translational research capabilities alone can help us bring out more technology-led innovations in India. What can be done to achieve that is simply a better industry collaboration, because it's not the IITs or BHUs or IISCs that will open up a factory. Finally, the product has to come out of a factory, and collaboration with manufacturers right at R&D stage in research institutes is fairly slow and low in India, which needs to be strengthened so that the manufacturing capabilities get embedded into the technology research as it is happening.
Mm-hmm. I think, like in an analogy, is like in the semiconductor, it couldn't have happened if the manufacturer, the $1 billion fabs were not there. All the design would have been of no consequence. And similarly, you are setting up the equivalent of the $1 billion fabs. So a startup doesn't have to invest in all that. They can just come and innovate. So it's really great. We've learned so much. And as I told you also before, Dr. Sharma, it makes us all very proud of what your team has accomplished there in such a short time. And I think it's a great accelerator for having India on the global map as an innovation-led economy. So it's really fantastic. And I'd like to wrap up, and I also would like you to say the parting words of about AMTZ, as well as your goal for TechRx. We'll talk about who's coming next to start this. Yeah.
So TechRx goal is to touch 1 million innovators every year, at least. And we are very, very lucky to have Professor Vijay Raghavan, the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, who is an extremely eminent scientist, a very progressive administrator, and more importantly, a very benevolent teacher and mentor to many innovators, incubators, and startups across the country. Mm-hmm. We are extremely happy to have him as our first inaugural speaker for the TechRx talks, which is happening on the extremely sacred occasion of the Independence Day on the 15th of August at 12 noon.
Yeah.
With that, we would also have the inauguration brochure release of the 3D bioprinting course, which we would be launching from the 28th of August. And you will see during the launch Professor Jordan Wallace, who is a global leader in 3D printing for biomaterials and bioprinting, who would be our second speaker. So we have very exciting speakers lined up from across the world, right from an eminent professional like Professor Vijay Raghavan, holding a country's growth story on science and innovation, to Dr. Sudhir Srivastav, the world leader in robotic cardiac surgery, to Professor Jordan Wallace from Australia. We have global giants, and we would love to touch the lives and ideas of more and more innovators across the world.
Yes, great. Thank you, Dr. Sharma. So thank you to all our audience. We'll just put a slide of about Dr. Vijay Raghavan. And he's one of the things about Dr. Vijay Raghavan is that he's also inspired a whole new generation of scientists in India. When I first moved to India 10 years ago, he was the one who showed me around NCBS, National Center for Biological Science.